I handed the cashier's check back to my mother without a word. "Amelia, what are you doing?" Mum's voice climbed an octave, her fingers trembling around the paper, worth $63,000, every penny of my college fund, now made out to my sister Jennifer. "I'm not signing the release form." I placed my phone on the kitchen table, the screen displaying my bank account with its pathetic balance of $417. "You need my signature to access the fund Grandma set up for me. You won't get it." Jennifer dropped her fork, her engagement ring catching the overhead light. "Are you seriously going to be this selfish? Bradley and I need this for the wedding venue deposit. It's due tomorrow." Then, Bradley should have saved for his own wedding. I picked up my backpack, the same threadbare one I'd carried through 4 years of high school while Jennifer got a new designer bag every semester. I have exactly 11 months until college applications are due. That money pays for Harvard, not your reception hall. Dad set down his newspaper, his face reddening. "Your sister's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You can take out student loans like everyone else." The laugh that escaped me felt like broken glass. "Like everyone else?" Jennifer's car cost $40,000. Her sorority dues were $1,500 a semester. But sure, I'm the selfish one for wanting the education fund my grandmother specifically established for me. "Bradley comes from a good family," Mum said, as if that explained everything. "This connection could help all of us. Why can't you think about someone besides yourself for once?" I thought about the acceptance letter I'd found in Jennifer's desk drawer 3 months ago. Stanford full ride, academic scholarship. She'd never mentioned it, never planned to go. She'd chosen State University instead because Bradley went there, and she'd told our parents the scholarship wasn't worth the hassle of moving to California. That was the moment I'd understood exactly how much my family valued education versus status. "I'm thinking very clearly," I said. "Grandma put that money in a trust because she knew I wanted to be a surgeon. She watched me dissect frogs in her kitchen when I was 10. She bought me every medical textbook I asked for. That fund has my name on it because she chose me, not Jennifer." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, the same weapon she'd used since childhood. "I can't believe you're throwing my wedding in my face because you're jealous. You've always been jealous that I'm pretty and popular and found someone who loves me." "Sign the form, Amelia." Dad's voice had gone cold. "Or find somewhere else to live." I'd already packed. My duffel bag sat in my car, loaded 3 hours ago, while they'd been at the country club. I'd known this conversation would end exactly one way. "I'll be staying with Mrs. Patterson." I headed for the door. She offered me her spare room in exchange for help with her physical therapy exercises. "Tell Jennifer congratulations on her wedding. I won't be attending." "If you walk out that door, you're not welcome back," Mum said. I kept walking. Mrs. Patterson's house smelled like lavender and old books. She'd been our neighbour for 15 years, a retired chemistry professor who'd suffered a stroke last winter. Her daughter lived in Seattle and sent money for a caregiver, but Mrs. Patterson had refused, insisting she could manage with minimal help. "Your family will come around," she said that first night, pouring me tea in her cluttered kitchen. "Parents often favour the squeaky wheel." "They won't." I wrapped my hands around the chipped mug. "And I don't need them to. I need to study." I fell asleep that night on sheets that smelled like mothballs, my alarm set for 4:30 a.m. I had work at the diner starting at 5, school from 8 to 3, then my shift at the library until 8. Somewhere in there, I needed to maintain my 4.0 GPA and score above 1550 on the SAT. The next 11 months blurred together like a time-lapse video. I worked 70 hours a week across 3 jobs. Mrs. Patterson refused rent, but I bought groceries and cooked dinners, helped her with exercises the physical therapist had prescribed, drove her to appointments. In exchange, she tutored me in chemistry and spent hours reviewing my college essays with the ruthless precision of someone who'd served on Stanford's admissions committee for a decade. "Your writing is technically perfect and completely bloodless," she told me in February, red pen slashing through my Common App essay. "You're writing like you're afraid someone will discover you have feelings. Harvard doesn't want robots. They want humans who happen to be brilliant." I rewrote it 7 times. The final version opened with a grandma teaching me to suture orange peels in her kitchen, her arthritic hands guiding mine, whispering that women had to be twice as good to be considered half as competent. Jennifer's wedding happened in March. I saw the photos on social media. She'd worn a dress that cost more than my car, held the reception at the Waterford estate, honeymooned in Bali. The comments gushed about fairy tale romance and perfect couples. 3 weeks later, Bradley lost his job at his father's investment firm. Something about compliance violations and an SEC investigation. The details were vague, but suddenly Jennifer was working double shifts at Nordstrom and posting motivational quotes about struggling young couples. I felt nothing watching her Instagram stories. No satisfaction, no sympathy. Just the blank space where family was supposed to be. April brought college decisions. I was restocking shelves at the library when my phone buzzed with the email notification. My hand shook so badly I dropped the book I'd been holding. Grey's Anatomy, ironically enough. "Congratulations, Amelia Chen." I stopped reading. Sat down on Mep. The floor between the stacks, the dusty carpet rough under my palms, and cried silently for 10 minutes. Mrs. Patterson found me there when she came looking for a gardening book. "Harvard?" she asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. "Full scholarship?" "Not full, but at enough. With my savings and the trust fund, I can cover it." She helped me stand, her grip stronger than it had been months ago. "Your grandmother would be proud." I thought about that a lot in the following weeks as I finalised financial aid packages and housing arrangements. Grandma had died when I was 15, liver cancer that metastasized faster than anyone expected. She'd been the only person who'd ever looked at me and seen potential instead of obligation. The trust fund had been her final message. "I believe in you. Don't let anyone steal your future." I didn't tell my family about Harvard. They'd find out eventually, but I wanted that information to arrive on my terms, not theirs. Summer passed in a haze of work and preparation. I picked up extra shifts, saved every possible dollar. Mrs. Patterson helped me shop for cold weather clothes at thrift stores, teaching me how to layer properly for Boston winters. Her daughter visited into July and tried to pay me for the caregiving I'd provided. "She won't take money," Mrs. Patterson told her, "but she could use a winter coat that doesn't have holes in the pockets." The coat arrived 2 weeks later, a beautiful charcoal wool blend from Nordstrom, still bearing the tags. Jennifer's employee discount, I realised, noting the receipt. A strange peace offering from someone who'd probably never known it was meant for me. I left for Harvard on August 23rd. Mrs. Patterson drove me to the airport, her hand steady on the wheel despite the lingering tremor from the stroke. "You're going to call me," she said, not asking. "Every Sunday," I promised, "and you'll come back for Thanksgiving." "If I can afford the ticket." She pressed an envelope into my hands. Inside was a check for $1,500. "Early Christmas present. Your grandmother would haunt me if I let you go hungry at Harvard." The flight to Boston felt surreal. I'd never been on a plane before, never left my home state. The woman next to me was reading a Danielle Steele novel and kept glancing at my medical textbook with concern, as if worried I was planning emergency surgery at 30,000 feet. Harvard's campus looked like something from a movie. Red brick buildings covered in ivy, students who moved with the casual confidence of people who'd never doubted their place in the world. My roommate was a girl named Rebecca from Connecticut, whose father owned a pharmaceutical company. She had more shoes than I'd owned articles of clothing in my entire life. "Where are you from?" she asked, unpacking what appeared to be an entire Sephora store onto her desk. "Small town in the Midwest. You wouldn't know it." "Cool. Do you have Instagram? We should follow each other." I deleted social media the day I left home. Watching my family's curated perfection from the outside had felt like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. "Not really my thing," I said. She shrugged, already losing interest, and I was grateful. I didn't need friends who'd ask about my family or wonder why I worked campus jobs while they went skiing in Vermont on weekends. The first semester nearly broke me. Not academically. I'd expected the workload, even thrived on it. But the casual wealth surrounding me was suffocating. Students complained about trust fund distributions while I calculated whether I could afford both textbooks and groceries. Study groups met at restaurants where a single meal cost what I'd budgeted for a week. I found my people eventually. Other scholarship students, international students on tight budgets, kids who worked library shifts and understood why I brought Tupperware containers to campus events with free food. We formed our own ecosystem, studying in cheaper coffee shops off campus, sharing textbooks and notes, celebrating small victories like discounted movie tickets and clearance section finds. Thanksgiving arrived, and true to my word, I flew back to see Mrs. Patterson. The ticket ate half my savings, but some promises mattered more than money. "Your mother called," Mrs. Patterson said over turkey dinner, "asking if I knew where you were." My hand froze halfway to my mouth. "What did you tell her?" "That you were thriving." She passed me the cranberry sauce. I didn't specify where. She didn't ask. "Did she say why she was calling?" "Jennifer's marriage is struggling. Bradley still hasn't found work. They're living in your parents' basement." Mrs. Patterson's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight edge in her voice. "Apparently, they're concerned about your well-being. 11 months too late." That's what I thought. I flew back to Boston the next day, relieved to return to a place where no one expected me to forgive people who tried to steal my future. Finals week turned me into something feral, living on coffee and spite, sleeping 4 hours a night, reviewing notes until the words blurred together. But when grades posted in January, I'd maintained my 4.0. The Dean's List letter arrived with a note about research opportunities for standout freshmen. Spring semester brought the research position I dreamed about, working with Dr. Elizabeth Hammond, a neurosurgeon pioneering minimally invasive techniques for brain tumour removal. The work was grunt labour mostly, sterilising equipment and organising files. But I absorbed everything like someone dying of thirst. "You're pre-med?" Dr. Hammond asked one day, watching me label specimen containers with obsessive precision. "Yes, ma'am. Surgery track." "You have steady hands." She handed me a scalpel and an orange. "Show me." I'd practiced suturing on fruit for 8 years, ever since Grandma first taught me. My fingers moved automatically, creating neat rows of even stitches that would have made her proud. Dr. Hammond nodded slowly. "Come to my surgery observation next week. I'll clear you with administration." That surgery changed everything. Watching Dr. Hammond work was like watching art, precise, confident, transformative. A 72-year-old woman arrived with tremors and aphasia, a meningioma pressing against her motor cortex. 4 hours later, she emerged with a fighting chance at normalcy. I cried in the observation gallery bathroom afterward, overwhelmed by the realization that this was possible, that I could actually do this with my life. "First surgery observation?" another student asked. A senior named Jessica who was heading to Johns Hopkins Medical School in the fall. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "It gets better," she said, "and worse. You'll see things that break your heart and things that put it back together. But if you felt that," she gestured at my tear-stained face, "then you're probably in the right field." Summer came too fast. I couldn't afford to go home, not financially and not emotionally. So I stayed in Boston, working 2 jobs and taking an intensive organic chemistry class. The city in summer was different, less frantic, filled with tourists and humidity that made my hair curl. Mrs. Patterson called every Sunday like clockwork. Her health had improved dramatically. She'd started volunteering at the local library, teaching literacy classes to adult learners. She never mentioned it to my family, and I never asked. Until the call in July. "Jennifer showed up at my door yesterday," Mrs. Patterson said, her tone carefully neutral. My stomach dropped. "What did she want?" "To know where you were. She said it was urgent." A pause. "She's pregnant, Amelia. About 4 months along from what I could see." I felt nothing. No joy for her, no concern, no curiosity about my future niece or nephew. Just that same blank space where family obligations were supposed to live. "Did you tell her?" "Of course not. Your location isn't mine to share." Another pause, longer this time. "She cried quite a bit, said she missed you, that she was sorry." "She's sorry she stole my college fund?" "She didn't say that specifically." "Then she's not sorry about anything that matters." I watched tourists take photos in Harvard Yard through my apartment window. "If she comes back, tell her I'm doing well and leave it at that." "Already planned on it." Sophomore year started with new roommates, 2 other scholarship students who understood the particular stress of proving you belong somewhere you couldn't technically afford. We shared meals, textbooks, and the unspoken understanding that failure wasn't an option when you came from nothing. October brought the email I'd been hoping for. Dr. Hammond wanted me to co-author a research paper on surgical outcomes for geriatric patients with meningiomas. It meant more hours in the lab, more data analysis, more nights surviving on instant ramen and ambition. But my name would be in a medical journal before I even applied to med school. I called Mrs. Patterson to share the news. "Your grandmother would be insufferably proud," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Almost as proud as I am." "I couldn't have done this without you." "Nonsense. You'd have found a way. You're too stubborn not to." A pause. "Your mother called again. She found out about Harvard somehow. I suspect Jennifer saw something online. She wants your phone number." My throat tightened. "What did you say?" "That I'd pass along the message. What you do with it is your choice. I didn't call, didn't text, let the request sit in my inbox, like unopened mail growing stale with time." Thanksgiving came around again. This time I stayed in Boston, volunteering at a free clinic in Dorchester with other pre-med students. We saw people who hadn't had medical care in years, who rationed insulin and ignored chest pains because survival meant choosing between health and rent. A woman came in with her daughter, maybe 8 years old, presenting with a chronic cough. The attending physician diagnosed walking pneumonia, prescribed antibiotics, and gently explained that the mold in their apartment was making the child sick. "I know," the mother said, her voice flat with exhaustion. "The landlord won't fix it. We can't afford to move." I thought about Jennifer's wedding venue, her designer dress, her honeymoon in Bali. $63,000 spent on a single day while this child struggled to breathe. The anger I'd buried for 2 years rose up fresh and sharp. Not at this woman, but at the obscene inequality of watching my sister's privilege while people suffered from problems money could easily solve. I worked harder after that, studied longer, let every moment of injustice fuel my determination to become the kind of doctor who actually helped people instead of just treating those who could afford care. Spring semester brought med school applications. I spent weeks perfecting my personal statement, getting feedback from Dr. Hammond and other mentors, trying to articulate why medicine mattered without sounding naive or privileged. The truth was complicated. I wanted to be a surgeon because Grandma had showed me I could be, because watching Dr. Hammond restore someone's quality of life felt like magic, because every patient I met at the free clinic deserved the same level of care as the wealthy families who populated Harvard's teaching hospitals. I sent applications to 15 schools: Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, and 10 others that offered strong surgical programs. The application fees alone cost over $2,000, money I'd saved from 18 months of campus jobs and summer work. Then I waited. Mrs. Patterson's health declined in March. Nothing dramatic, just the slow accumulation of age catching up with determination. Her daughter wanted her to move to Seattle, but Mrs. Patterson refused. "I'm not leaving my home to die in a strange city," she told me over the phone, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "Besides, someone needs to be here when you come back with good news." "You're not dying," I said, trying to convince both of us. "Eventually," she coughed, a rattling sound that made my chest tight. "But not today. Today, I'm going to make soup and watch my gardening shows and wait for you to call with med school acceptances." The first acceptance arrived in April. Johns Hopkins. I screamed in my apartment, startling my roommates, then immediately called Mrs. Patterson. "One down," she said, and I could hear the smile beneath the fatigue. Harvard came next. Then Columbia, Yale, Stanford. By May, I had acceptances from 12 schools, including every top-tier program I'd applied to. The rejections from the other 3 came with notes encouraging me to reapply, as if I'd need backup options. I chose Harvard Medical School. Staying in Boston meant being close to Dr. Hammond's research lab, maintaining the network I'd built, and visiting Mrs. Patterson without expensive flights. Also, petty as it was, I wanted my medical degree to have Harvard printed on it, wanted the name that carried weight in every room, that opened doors, that meant I'd made it despite everything. Graduation from undergrad came in late May. I walked across that stage in a borrowed gown, accepting my diploma with a 4.0 GPA and summa cum laude honours. Mrs. Patterson sat in the family section, wrapped in blankets despite the warm weather, her daughter beside her. They were the only people who came to watch me graduate. I didn't cry during the ceremony. Saved my tears for afterward, in Mrs. Patterson's arms, both of us shaking with emotions too big for words. "4 years ago, you walked out with nothing," she whispered. "Look at you now." We took pictures, me in my cap and gown, her in her wheelchair, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. Her daughter printed copies and framed one for Miss Patterson's mantle, placing it next to photos of her own children's graduations. I flew back to my hometown in June, just once, for a specific purpose. Mrs. Patterson's health was failing faster now, and I wanted to handle unfinished business while I still could. My parents' house looked exactly the same pristine lawn, same luxury cars in the driveway, same aura of carefully maintained appearances. I parked on the street and walked to the door, my Harvard diploma in a folder under my arm. Jennifer answered. She was visibly pregnant now, wearing yoga pants and an exhausted expression that made her look older than 25. "Amelia?" Her voice cracked on my name. "You're here. You're actually here." "Is Mum home?" Yes, we're all here. Bradley and I moved back in after..." She trailed off, one hand protective over her stomach. "It doesn't matter. Come in. Please, come in." The house smelled like my childhood, Mum's vanilla candles and the faint chemical scent of carpet cleaner. My family sat in the living room like an intervention waiting to happen. Mum on the couch, Dad in his chair, Bradley on the love seat looking uncomfortable. "Amelia." Mum stood reaching for me. "Sweetheart, we've been so worried." I held up a hand, stopping her mid-movement. "I'm not here for a reunion. I'm here to deliver information." The room went silent. I placed the folder on the coffee table and opened it, displaying my diploma. "I graduated from Harvard 3 weeks ago, summa cum laude. I've been accepted to Harvard Medical School with a partial scholarship. I start in August." Mum's face went white. Dad stared at the diploma like it was written in a foreign language. Jennifer sank into the nearest chair, one hand pressed to her mouth. "The trust fund Grandma left me paid for part of it," I continued, my voice steady. "The rest I covered through scholarships, grants, and working 70 hours a week. I now have approximately $8,000 in debt, which I'll pay off during my residency." "Amelia, we didn't know," Dad started. "You didn't ask." I looked at each of them in turn. 2 years ago, you tried to steal my education to pay for a wedding. You threw me out when I refused. You made it clear that Jennifer's happiness mattered more than my future. We thought you were being dramatic, Mum said weakly. Teenagers threatened to leave all the time. We thought you'd come back when you calmed down. I was 18, legally an adult, and I meant every word. I picked up the diploma, returning it to the folder. I'm not here for an apology or a reconciliation. I'm here because you're going to find out eventually, and I wanted you to hear it from me. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in 2 years. She'd lost weight despite the pregnancy, had dark circles under her eyes, wore an engagement ring that looked dulled from constant wear. The golden girl who'd had everything had somehow ended up with nothing that mattered. I felt sympathy, but I didn't feel forgiveness. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't give me back the childhood where I was invisible. Doesn't erase the 1,000 small ways you were prioritised while I was expected to be grateful for scraps. Sorry is just a word people use when consequences arrive. That's not fair, Dad said. We love both our daughters equally. You love the idea of loving us equally, but love is action, not intention, and your actions have always been clear. I moved toward the door. I have a life in Boston now, people who actually supported me when it mattered. I'm going to be a surgeon, and I'm going to be exceptional at it, and none of you get to claim any credit for that achievement. Amelia, please. Mum followed me to the door. Can we at least stay in touch? Know how you're doing? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. You can read about my accomplishments in medical journals eventually. That's more than you deserve. I left without looking back, drove straight to the airport, and flew back to Boston the same day. Mrs. Patterson was waiting when I arrived at her house, her daughter having driven her home from a hospital appointment. How did it go? She asked. Exactly how it needed to. I sat beside her wheelchair, resting my head against her arm. I'm done with them. Good. Her hand found my hair, stroking it gently, like Grandma used to. You deserve people who celebrate you, not people who make you prove your worth. Mrs. Patterson died in her sleep 3 weeks later. Her daughter called at 2 a.m., apologising for the hour but knowing I'd want to know immediately. I sat on my apartment floor and sobbed until sunrise, mourning the woman who'd saved my life by offering shelter when my own family had turned me away. The funeral was small, held in her garden with close friends and family. Her daughter asked me to speak, and I told the truth, that Mrs. Patterson had given me hope when I had nothing else, had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, had loved me like family when my own family had failed. She used to say I reminded her of her younger self, I told the gathered mourners. Stubborn and smart and too proud to ask for help. She taught me that pride could be strength instead of weakness if you channeled it properly. I'm going to medical school because she showed me how to fight for my dreams without apologising for wanting them. Her daughter gave me 3 things from the estate. Grandma's surgical textbooks that Mrs. Patterson had kept for me, a photograph of the 2 of us at my graduation, and a letter Mrs. Patterson had written months before her death. I read it alone in my apartment that night. Dearest Amelia, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I hope it involves gardens and good books, though I suspect it's just peaceful nothingness, which sounds lovely after 83 years of noise. I want you to know that watching you these past years has been one of the great joys of my life. You remind me why I became a teacher in the first place, because occasionally you meet someone whose potential is so bright it hurts to look at directly, and helping them shine feels like the most important work in the world. Your family failed you. That's not your fault, and it's not your burden to fix. Some people never learn to see past their own limitations, to value substance over appearance, to understand that love requires sacrifice. But you learned those lessons anyway. You became someone extraordinary not because of your circumstances, But despite them, that's rare. That's powerful. That's exactly the kind of person who should be trusted with other people's lives. Be the surgeon you dream of being. Be ruthless with your ambition and generous with your compassion. Let the people who tried to steal your future watch you soar from a distance. They don't deserve front row seats to your success. And Amelia, don't let bitterness poison your victories. You won. You survived and thrived and became everything they said was impossible. That's enough. You don't need their validation or their regret. You just need to keep being magnificent. With love and pride, Margaret Patterson. I folded the letter carefully and placed it with my diploma, my acceptance letters, and the photograph of Mrs. Patterson at my graduation. Evidence of the life I'd built from nothing, with help from the only person who'd believed I deserved everything. Medical school started in August, and it was exactly as brutal as promised. The workload made undergrad look easy, the competition was fierce, and the pressure to perform was constant. But I'd survived worse. I'd survived being disposable to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Anatomy lab, pharmacology, pathology. I devoured it all with the hunger of someone who'd fought too hard to get here to waste a single opportunity. My study group called me intense, which was polite code for obsessive. I didn't care. I was there to become excellent, not popular. Dr. Hammond let me continue research work when I had spare time, which wasn't often but felt like oxygen when it happened. Watching surgeries, analysing outcomes, understanding the science behind saving lives, it never stopped feeling like magic. You're going to be a tremendous surgeon, Dr. Hammond told me during a rare quiet moment in her office. You have the skills, obviously, but more importantly, you have the temperament. You understand that every person on your table is someone's whole world. My grandmother taught me that, I said. She used to say that the best doctors remember what it feels like to be powerless. Smart woman, the smartest. First year melted into second year, then third. Clinical rotation started, and I discovered that I loved the chaos of the hospital, the urgency, the problem solving, the way every day presented impossible puzzles that somehow had solutions. I rotated through different specialties, trying to keep an open mind, but neurosurgery kept calling me back. The precision, the stakes, the way a millimetre could mean the difference between recovery and permanent disability. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. During my neurosurgery rotation, I assisted on a case that would have made Grandma proud. A 12-year-old girl with a cerebellar tumour causing severe ataxia. The surgery took 9 hours, Dr. Hammond removing the mass with microscopic precision, while I retracted tissue and absorbed every moment. When the girl woke up post-op and could touch her nose with her finger, something she hadn't been able to do in 6 months, her mother collapsed in grateful tears. "You helped save my daughter," she said to me, gripping my hands. "Dr. Hammond did the saving," I corrected gently. "I just watched and learned." "You were there. That matters." I thought about that conversation for weeks afterward. About how presence mattered, how showing up for people in their worst moments was its own form of medicine. About how I'd had people show up for me, Grandma, Mrs. Patterson, when my own family couldn't be bothered. 4th year brought residency applications. I applied exclusively to neurosurgery programs, knowing the odds were brutal but refusing to settle. My application was strong. Top of my class, published research, glowing recommendations from Dr. Hammond and other attendings, a personal statement about using precision and compassion to restore people's lives. Match day arrived in March of my 4th year. The entire medical school class gathered in a lecture hall, everyone clutching sealed envelopes that held their future. We opened them simultaneously at noon, and the room erupted in cheers and tears and relieved laughter. I stared at the paper in my hands. Massachusetts General Hospital Neurosurgery Residency Program. 7 years of training at one of the best surgical programs in the world, working alongside pioneers in the field, learning to do the impossible. I called Mrs. Patterson's daughter first, needing to share the news with someone who understood what it meant. "She'd be thrilled," her daughter said, her voice thick with emotion. "She always said you were going to change the world." Looks like she was right. Graduation from medical school happened in May, 4 years after my undergraduate ceremony, 8 years after I'd walked out of my parents' house with nothing but a duffel bag and determination. I wore the same borrowed gown, accepted my medical degree with high honours, and took pictures with my study group outside the school. No family attended. I didn't invite them, and they didn't ask. Instead, I celebrated with the people who'd actually shown up for my journey, classmates who understood the sacrifice, attendings who'd mentored me, the free clinic volunteers who'd reminded me why medicine mattered. We went to a cheap restaurant in Cambridge, toasted with water because we were all too broke for champagne, and talked about the residencies waiting for us. "To surviving," someone said. "To becoming," I corrected, raising my glass. The next morning, I received an email with the subject line, "We're so proud of you." I almost deleted it without reading. The sender was my mother, and I'd blocked her number years ago, but apparently email had slipped through. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Dearest Amelia, Jennifer told me about your medical school graduation. She saw the announcement online. We know you don't want to hear from us, and we understand why. But I needed you to know that we're proud of you. I know that's not enough. That pride without support is meaningless. That we failed you when you needed us most. I've spent the last 4 years trying to understand how I let that happen, how I prioritized the wrong things, how I could look at my brilliant daughter and see someone whose dreams were less important than her sister's wedding. I don't have good answers, only excuses about how we were raised, about what we thought mattered, about the mistakes parents make when they're too busy keeping up appearances to see their children clearly. Jennifer's marriage ended last year. Bradley left when the money ran out and reality set in. She's raising your nephew alone, working 2 jobs, living in our basement. She talks about you sometimes, about how you tried to tell her that chasing status would leave her empty. She didn't listen. Neither did we. I'm not asking for forgiveness. You don't owe us that, but I wanted you to know that we were wrong, that you were right, that you've become someone extraordinary despite our failures as parents. Your grandmother would be so proud. With love, Mum." I read it twice, then closed my laptop and went for a run along the Charles River. The morning was beautiful, spring sunshine, rowing crews cutting through calm water, the city waking up around me. I ran until my legs burned and my thoughts cleared, until the anger and old pain felt distant instead of immediate. The truth was, I didn't need their pride, didn't need their regret or their acknowledgement that I'd been right all along. Those things would have mattered 8 years ago, when I was 18 and desperate for validation. But I'd built a life without them, found people who valued me, worked for everything I'd achieved, become someone I was proud of independent of their approval. Their pride now felt like an afterthought, a participation trophy for parents who'd skipped the actual parenting. I deleted the email without responding. Residency started in July, and within a week, I understood why people called it survival training. The hours were inhuman. 80 to 100 per week, 36-hour shifts, studying complex procedures while chronically sleep-deprived, managing patient care with attending surgeons who expected perfection. I loved every brutal moment of it. My co-residents became my family, bonded by shared trauma and dark humour and the strange intimacy of seeing each other at their absolute worst. We covered for each other, quizzed each other on anatomy, and celebrated small victories like successfully placing an IV on the first try or getting 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The work was everything I dreamed of, scrubbing in on surgeries, holding retractors while attendings removed tumours, learning to navigate the brain's geography with microscopic precision. Every procedure was a lesson, every patient a reminder of why the exhaustion mattered. 3 years into residency, I performed my first surgery as primary surgeon, a straightforward craniotomy to evacuate a subdural hematoma. My attending supervised, but the scalpel was in my hands. Decisions were mine to make. The outcome rested on my skills. The patient was a 67-year-old man who'd fallen and hit his head, the bleed compressing his brain and causing progressive confusion. 30 minutes after I opened his skull and removed the clot, his mental status improved. By the next morning, he was joking with nurses and asking for coffee. "You saved his life," my attending said afterward. "We saved his life," I corrected. Take the win, Dr. Reynolds. You earned it." Dr. Reynolds, my name with the title I'd bled for. I stood in the locker room after that case and cried like I hadn't in years, overwhelmed by the realization that I'd actually done it, become the surgeon Grandma had believed I could be, despite everyone who'd said it was impossible, despite starting from nothing, despite being disposable to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The years blurred together after that, surgeries and complications and learning curves and small victories. I worked on traumatic brain injuries, aneurysms, tumours both benign and malignant. I held people's lives in my hands, quite literally, and learned to trust my training when everything went wrong. Year 5 of residency brought chief resident responsibilities and more autonomy. I operated regularly now, my hands steady and confident, my decisions quick and accurate. The attendings trusted me with complex cases, and I was developing a reputation for being technically excellent and unshakable under pressure. "You remind me of myself at your stage," Dr. Hammond told me during a rare lunch break. She was semi-retired now, still consulting on difficult cases, but mostly teaching. Same intensity, same refusal to accept limitations. "You're the reason I'm here," I said honestly. "No, you're the reason you're here. I just didn't get in your way." She sipped her coffee, studying me. "Have you thought about what comes after residency, fellowships, research?" "I want to focus on pediatric neurosurgery, kids with brain tumours who deserve the same level of care regardless of their parents' insurance." I thought about that little girl from my clinical rotation years ago, how her mother's relief had felt like validation. Maybe work with a children's hospital that serves underserved populations. That's a hard road, emotionally devastating some days. Most worthwhile things are. She smiled. "Your grandmother raised you well." She did. I finished residency 7 years after starting, graduating at the top of my program with multiple job offers. I accepted a position at Boston Children's Hospital as an attending pediatric neurosurgeon, specializing in tumor resection and vascular malformations. My first day as an attending, I wore my white coat with my name embroidered on it, Dr. Amelia Reynolds, MD, Pediatric Neurosurgery. I stood in the hospital lobby and took a picture, sent it to Mrs. Patterson's daughter with a message. "We made it." She responded immediately, "Mum always knew you would. Congratulations, Dr. Reynolds." 13 years had passed since I'd walked out of my parents' house. 13 years since Jennifer had asked me to sacrifice my education for her wedding. 13 years of work and sacrifice and becoming someone extraordinary, despite starting from nothing. I never reached out to my family, never sent announcements of my achievements or offered reconciliation. They existed somewhere in my past, like characters from a book I'd finished reading years ago, important to the plot, but irrelevant to the sequel. Sometimes I wondered about Jennifer, about the nephew I'd never met, about whether my parents had learned anything from watching one daughter soar while enabling the others fall. But mostly I didn't think about them at all. My life was full without them. Challenging surgeries, patients who trusted me with their children's lives, colleagues who respected my skills, a chosen family of people who'd supported me when it mattered. I'd built something real from the ruins of what my family had tried to steal, and it was more beautiful than anything their approval could have added. On the anniversary of my first day at Mrs. Patterson's house, I visited her grave, brought flowers and sat in the grass beside the headstone, updating her on my life the way I used to during our Sunday phone calls. I operated on 17 kids this month, I told her, saved 16 of them. The one I lost, a girl with a brainstem glioma, I sat with her family for 3 hours afterward, held her mother while she cried. It was the worst day of my career, and also somehow exactly where I'm supposed to be. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and I imagined it was her approval. I saw my family's Christmas card online last year, I continued. Jennifer's still single, working as a teacher now. My nephew looks happy, at least. My parents look older. They post inspirational quotes about family bonds and second chances. I don't think they understand that some bridges can't be rebuilt. I traced the letters on her headstone. Margaret Patterson, beloved mother, grandmother, teacher, friend. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in me when I had nothing, for showing me that chosen family can be stronger than blood. I hope wherever you are, you know that I made it. We made it. I left the flowers, lavender, her favourite, and drove back to the hospital. I had evening rounds, 3 post-op checks, and a consult on a 10-year-old with a possible arteriovenous malformation. My schedule was insane. My personal life was non-existent, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Sometimes people asked if I regretted the path I'd chosen, if I wished I'd reconciled with my family, if I felt like I'd missed out on normal milestones, like marriage and children. The answer was always no. I'd chosen medicine over comfort, achievement over belonging, self-respect over family approval. And in making those choices, I'd become someone I was proud of. Someone who saved lives, who fought for patients who couldn't fight for themselves, who turned childhood trauma into purpose. My sister had taken my college fund without shame, expecting me to crumble under the weight of her selfishness. Instead, I'd let her watch from a distance as I graduated from Harvard. Twice. And I discovered that the best revenge wasn't making them regret their choices. It was building a life so full of purpose and meaning that their approval became irrelevant, a footnote in someone else's story, barely worth mentioning in mine.